selling the raffle tickets, please just take some and sell them. You don't have to be there to be able to be a winner, and that's a great way for us to be able to help raise some more money. I will say we've had a really great fundraiser when it comes to sponsorships. We've raised close to $10,000, so like that's pretty big. And thanks to Brett, there's not much overhead at all, if any. So we really want to say thank you again to him. But everybody should come out. I've confirmed the band. They're going to be there from 5 to 7. There's plenty of room to social distance. If you haven't been there, it's an awesome place to go. And so we're looking forward to seeing everybody. And please, if you look on Facebook, make sure you share it. Because again, as you guys all know, algorithms are great, right? So the more that we like it, the more we share it, the more people are going to see it. So please continue to look at those, because we're also putting shouts out to all the sponsors right now, and then we will start putting shout outs to the auction items that are coming up.
And I just want to add, I will be here early next week with the entry tickets. Each Rotary member is going to be responsible for 4 tickets to either sell or use or donate. So I will have those prepared for next week, either before or after the meeting. And if you can't make it to the meeting, send me a quick email and I'll be happy to mail it to you or arrange delivery.
Thank you. Christy Williams.
I am happy today to be here as an official member and celebrate the start of Waynesboro Public Schools this week. It's been very successful so far. And then within the next 7 days as well, my son turns 4, and 3 days later, my daughter turns 9. So it's a happy week for me.
Let's go to Len.
So I've got a happy dollar, also in reference to the fundraiser for the auction, and my happy dollar is for Christy Williams, who has laid down the challenge. So she's going to put together a basket of UVA items, shirts, blankets, mugs, etc. They'll have a retail value of $250 to $300. The challenge is this: if somebody from the other school in Virginia, I think they call it Virginia Tech, would want to come up with a similar basket, like a VT basket, if that basket earns more money than her UVA basket, she'll personally make the difference between what the UVA basket and VT basket sells for. So that's the challenge. All you Virginia Tech fans, you want to put a basket together and you think you can outdo the UVA team, more power to it. Thank you, Christy.
I thought the other school in Virginia was JMU. What's this tech thing?
Any other happy dollars? Anyone? Okay, let's go to Secretary Minutes. Mary Ann.
I really don't have any information concerning members of the club, but as was just pointed out, the raffle tickets, and that's going to be in lieu of a grand prize that we've been giving away, so it's a 50-50. So we're asking you to pick up the number you can sell. This is going to be a big part of our fundraiser. For those of you who are Zooming, if you will let Lenny, I don't know, Sarah's on there too, but let them know that you would like tickets and how many. We will see that you get them, and we will bill you for it. You will be billed, but if you don't turn them back in, you will be charged for them. You'll actually need to pay for them. So keep that in mind. The tickets are different. On the back side, you will put the name of the person you sell it to and give it back to us to win the draw.
Okay, thank you. Announcements. Today is a deadline for member satisfaction surveys, so if you have not filled one out, please send it back into online through the email. Fundraiser just around the corner, as mentioned, and save the date. On Wednesday, September 16th, 7 p.m., we're all invited to District Governor Nancy's Area 4 visit by Zoom. She'll be sharing about RI and our district, but would also like to hear from us any questions, concerns, accomplishments. Area 4 is made up of 5 clubs, including our club, the Waynesboro Morning Club, Stanton Morning Club, Stanton Augusta Club, and Nelson County Club. And the Zoom link has been sent by email, but please let Marianne or myself know if you have any trouble getting that. It'd be wonderful to see many of you there to support our own member, DG Nancy. Really quick before the program, if Harold Cook would join me at the lectern. You're not in trouble, can you? So we've missed Harold last week, but this is in recognition of his 5th Paul Harris Fellow Award. It has 4 sapphires. So thank you for your contributions and service. And can I pin you?
Oh, please. I thought I talked too long and you were going to find me.
No, I would just make you sing. So, okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, would Doris please join me at the lectern to introduce our speaker? Oh, one thing. Could everyone please mute their screens, just to make sure? Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Just make sure. Go ahead.
What do you want me to do?
Go ahead and speak.
I'm fine with that. Okay. Our program today is an update on Global Grant 26257 between the Waynesboro Rotary Club and the Limby Rotary Club in Malawi. First, I want to share with our new members and those listening in a little bit of information about the grant so that when our speaker comes, you will be able to put it all together. Why this project? Why did we choose this project? Well, Malawi is one of the poorest countries in Africa. The majority of the population live without electricity, running water, and sanitation. 1 in 5 children do not live to their 5th birthday. The incidence of clubfoot is twice the rate in the U.S. Children with disabilities and deformities are often ostracized and considered as cursed. And there is a severe shortage of physicians. In 2014, there was 1 physician for every 65,000 people. For the entire population of 15 million people, there were 8 full-time and 2 part-time orthopedic surgeons, terribly inadequate. Our goal was to assist the dedicated doctors and nurses at the Bite Cure International Hospital to provide the best care for children and adults in Blantyre, Malawi. So how were we going to do this? By providing equipment and supplies to support orthopedic surgery and care, by providing equipment and supplies to train Malawian surgeons, medical students, and nurses, and by supporting a sustainable structure of orthopedic training and care in Malawi. What did we accomplish? With the help of many, I might say, including our Rotary District, Rotary International, individuals from our community, and IMEC America, we contributed $400,000 worth of medical and educational equipment to the Bite Cure Hospital. These funds made it possible to provide 15 medical suites to the Bite Cure Hospital. Each suite contained multiple items. For example, physical therapy suite contained PT tables, wheelchairs, weights, mobility medical equipment, and so forth. Dr. Burgess and his wife Margie were super supporters of our grant. It would have been almost impossible for us to do and work this grant without their support. They were our feet on the ground in Malawi. It is my great pleasure to present at this time Dr. Dave Burgess, who will give us an update on where and what our grant is still doing in Malawi. Dr. Burgess.
Now let's get rid of this thing. Wow, it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years since the container got to Malawi. It's really hard to believe. It really was an amazing gift of medical equipment and supplies, and to say they were vitally needed is such an understatement. I almost hate to say it because it was so much needed. And there's one thing that I know. One thing that I know is that you guys as an organization, as the Rotary Club of Waynesboro, and frankly, I know so many of you as individuals, but I know that you're incredibly generous and philanthropic, and frankly, how you see the project, how you see your work, just even the statements this morning. The work that you do shows that you care, and I think that's testimony to I was actually sitting back there reading the 408 test, and thinking about how in the project, I think you really manifested those in a really tremendous way. But I have a question, and something to think about. You don't have to answer. If you want to yell out an answer, it's okay. But I have a question. Why do you give your money? Why do you give these valuable things that you have? And so why do you give it away to people that really you don't know? I mean, Doris' next door neighbor, and so that was a bit of a connection, but $400,000 worth of things to, frankly, people you don't know at all. And so I think it's really interesting to actually sit and as you think, why do we do that? Why do I give my money to Rotary? Why do I give my time? Why do I give my interest? And to what end? For what purpose? So, anybody have any answers? Are there any ones that just pop up that you want to yell out?
To provide hope for other people.
Provide hope, that's great. Trying to get you guys engaged here. Well, essentially, the number one is, I think that's a tremendous one. I think that is really one of the top. I know in one of the studies it talks about one of the reasons you give is that you believe in the mission of an organization. And you obviously believe in the mission of Rotary that then corresponds into the mission of who they support. And then the other that I really like is that, thinking that your gift can make a difference. And I think that's really important. And then the other thing is, do you give typically for long-term support, or do you give for short-term? Like, do you give for just sort of what's going to take care of something for the next week or two, or for the next several months? Or do you give for long-term support? Do you give for tangible physical needs, or do you give for more increasing capacity for long-term development? And then the other thing that you always have to ask, I think, when you're giving money, are you giving it to the right people? Is it going to be used for a worthwhile purpose? So all I like to say is, when I talk about that, is that your donation fit every one of these. You fit short and long-term needs. It went to the right people. It filled such an immediate short-term need in so many ways. And then I'm going to want to talk about some of the long-term benefits in addition. So let me tell you a little bit about how the project was used, and frankly, I won't touch on all of them because there are so many ways that it's been helpful. But for the short term, we had tremendous needs. I'd say one of the most tremendous needs we had was the lack of critical care equipment. And so things like the EKGs. Interesting enough, right before it came to EKGs, EKG machines that we had broken. And there were several within this shipment. The defibrillators, there were crash carts, there were supplies, there were suction pumps. We don't think about suction pumps here as being a big deal, but there were no suction pumps. Those had broken, several months before. And one of the critical yet underappreciated areas of every hospital that you tend not to think about until you're having surgery is adequate anesthesia care. And we were in a real crisis at that point. But because of what the shipment had, we were able to do much more really complex surgery. We were able to operate on kids that were much sicker, not because of just the period in surgery, but for the post-operative care that they had. And so one of the other benefits of this was training. Malawi had several clinical officers, which are almost like medical technicians that provide most of the care in Malawi. But for anesthesia, we had some anesthesia clinical officers that were working with a missionary anesthesiologist. So because of that stuff, he was able to train them in much more skills in critical care. And I think the thing that's great is Tandy, one of these guys was Tandy, wonderful young guy, but he was so good, and he developed so many skills that he actually is now in medical school. And he's actually going to medical school so he can become an anesthesiologist so that he can train other anesthesiologists. And I think, again, that's just a critical side of what this allowed. One of the other things was our fracture care was dramatically improved. One of the things that made a huge difference is our C-arm. You probably don't know what a C-arm is. C-arm is a fluoroscopy unit that's used in surgery so that you can visualize things without actually being there. And so we were able to use this a lot to trade. We were able to use a lot of small tools. We had a mini fracture set that was really good because we could treat more hand surgeries. We could do facial fractures, which we had never been able to do before. Most orthopedic surgeons here don't treat facial fractures, but we got to do that in Malawi, which was really fun for us, not for the patients. But so there were just many more advanced surgical tools that we were able to do. One of the things that we had not really been able to take care of pelvic fractures, and there was a lot of pedestrian trauma in Malawi, and so there were a lot of pelvic fractures that had to go untreated, and we were able to actually treat those because of having the C-arm and having a lot of these new tool sets. One of the things I loved was that we were able to get more arthroscopic equipment. They call it, this is a British hospital, it was set up, so it was called keyhole surgery there. So if you ever hear of keyhole surgery, they're talking about arthroscopic surgery. But because of getting more of the instruments, we had a whole tower that had the whole scope, the monitors, the light sources, the whole thing was through this grant with IMAC, and it was tremendous. One of the great things, one of the ways we got a lot of notoriety was that we were able to do a lot of meniscus surgeries, a lot of ligament reconstructions, and we ended up treating over half of the Malawi football team or soccer team. And that gives you a lot of notoriety in Malawi because every kid in Malawi follows the national football team. And so a lot of people learned about who we were, and we ended up getting a lot of patients from areas that we hadn't had before because these football players would frequently mention where they had gotten their surgery, so kept them playing, which was actually really nice. I think one of the greatest benefits, Doris mentioned physical therapy. One of the greatest benefits was the physical therapy suite. It was really good because this allowed us to be able to do therapy. It allowed a lot of gait training. A lot of these kids that were there were getting deformity corrections and were frequently in the hospital for even up to 3 to 4 months. And most of that time was spent doing therapy as they were recovering from their deformity surgeries. And because of that, at the time when I got to Malawi, or when Margie and I got to Malawi, there were no Malawian physical therapists, not a single one. It was all by technicians that called themselves physical therapists, but none of them were trained. And the physical therapist that was at the hospital when we got there was involved in the College of Medicine, which happened to be next door to the hospital. At the College of Medicine started up a program. And her technician was one of the first students in that program. And so she went through that, and there are now, I think, about 40 physical therapists that have graduated from that program. And now, you mentioned the population of Malawi was 15 million about that time. It's now approaching 19 million. So still 40 physical therapists in a population of 19 million isn't very high, but it's a great foundation for future future training. I think one of the parts that I really love is talking about the people. We had a lot of orthopedic residents come through. We typically had a British orthopedic resident that would come from a British program that would come. We had Malawian residents, and then we almost always had fellows or residents that were from somewhere in Eastern Africa. And so let me just tell you about a couple of these guys and how they changed. There was a guy, Kumbakani Manda and Boston Muntali, were two of the first. There was an orthopedic training program that started 2 years after I got there. And these were the first two graduates. They were Malawian orthopedic residents. They were the first two. They were pioneers in doing this. They are now practicing. One is in Blantyre, where I was. One is now in Lilongwe, both teaching in the residency program that they graduated from. They both spent, during their time in training, they both spent about 2 years at Cure, following us, working with the things. Because, again, we had a lot of, because of this grant, there was no way that they had any exposure to the fracture care that we had, to C-arms, to the facial fractures, hand surgeries. Most of these things, the pediatric orthopedics that we were doing, they had no exposure. And now they're teaching those things in those hospitals. And those hospitals are training guys that are going to district hospitals all over Malawi. Another guy is Tongai Chitsamanga, who is a guy from Zimbabwe. Actually, he's got a great story, because he actually just was a very poor guy that came out of the villages, was very bright, got a government scholarship to go to his high school in Zimbabwe. From there, got to go to medical school in Zimbabwe, started a residency program there, and then did about half of his residency at the Cure Hospital. But he's back in Harare, Zimbabwe, now teaching. And the thing that he really fell in love with, he fell in love with arthroscopic surgery. So he is now, of African doctors, he is the go-to guy in Harare now for athletes needing to get ligament reconstruction surgery. Pamela Sams is, again, another Zimbabwean. She came from a very similar background as from Tongai, but she likewise went through school, started residency, basically had heard about what we were doing in Malawi, came here and basically spent 3 years of her training. And she is now, she had been in residency in Zimbabwe. She did 3 years there, did a fellowship in Tanzania, is now working at the Zambian Italian hospital in Lusaka. Again, she's teaching. But it's great, so when you see the influence of where all the training has gone, and the influence in Southern and Eastern Africa for where that's gone. One of our British residents who came to us is actually spent a year at Cure, and he's now heading up the Cure Hospital in Ethiopia that is treating people from all over Northern Africa. And then one of my favorite guys is a guy by the name of Bondisi Malaba. And he is just a remarkable guy. He was in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, and he was about halfway through his residency, and he came to do a rotation at Cure, and he actually realized, the education I'm getting in Zimbabwe is very narrow and it's very focused, but it's not very broad. And so he switched his residency to actually the Cure Hospital in Kenya after he spent the time with us. And great thing, he finished there, and he is now actually one of the lead orthopedic surgeons there at the Kenya Cure Hospital. So we've talked about some of the people trained there. So, what's so important is how the shipment of the supplies and the equipment and materials really enabled us to treat children more effectively, and with much, much better rehab. And then it trained people. There was tremendous short-term benefit. But I think more importantly is this a long-term benefit of the training. The capacity of the hospital was increased, but the training capabilities were increased dramatically. One of the groups that we haven't even talked about, we've talked about nurses, physical therapists, doctors, medical students. One of the groups we have not talked about is orthopedic clinical officers. They had started that program a few years before I came, and they would rotate through Cure in addition. And it is actually this group that probably provides the majority of the medical care in Malawi, because they are the guys who go to the district hospitals and go to the villages and throughout. And so it was great to be able to be involved in their training. One of the platforms that came in was the Learning Suite. And I remember when we were putting together, I thought that was actually going to be one of the less significant parts. I didn't tell Doris that at the time. But I was a little concerned that that was going to be the less significant. Yet that had video cameras, it had a large screen TV, it had monitors, it had desks. We were able to set up a whole sort of learning suite from that. And that has been used for conferences, meetings where other people are coming in from overseas, for the nurses training, from physical therapy training, for orthopedic clinical officer training, for the residency programs. People from the government hospital and the medical school came over and still are continuing to use that on a regular basis. So, and these things are all still being used daily. So when you think about it, there have been hundreds of medical students that have been involved in addition. So one of the things, the stated goals of the project were to improve the capacity of local healthcare professionals, to enhance the health infrastructure of local communities, to prevent physical disability resulting from disease or injury, supporting studies for career-minded professionals related to disease prevention and treatment. Every one of those goals was met and surpassed. And it is because you supplied those needs and how they allowed us to provide that care and that ongoing teaching. It's important to know the trends in our involvement as Westerners in healthcare, in Malawi and really throughout Africa and the developing world is changing. Christian Medical and Dental Association made a statement that the missionary physicians of the 21st century will be Africans, and U.S. missions agencies couldn't be happier. That's very true. The world is transitioning so that we will be needed less and less, and our role is going to increasingly be one of providing training more than providing actual medical or surgical services. And I think this project in Malawi made this truth much more of a reality. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not sure how much time we have, actually.
Maybe a minute for questions.
Okay. Yes.
I'm wondering how the population grew by 5 million people in 5 years. It isn't just from normal population growth. Has there been like refugees that have come to Malawi, or?
There have been quite a few refugees coming in, particularly from Mozambique. There's been a significant insurgencies in Mozambique, so a fair number of that, but most of it is reproduction. I don't have to go through the specifics of that, but most of it's been, the traditions in Malawi is to have very large families, mostly because traditionally half of your children died. And so the maternal, the fetal death rate has actually, neonatal death rate has actually gone down significantly with all the health issues that are, with all the concerns that have gone on. So not only has the birth rate has stayed about the same, but the death rate has actually dropped. And it was actually going up very steeply. And then when HIV/AIDS hit, it decimated the population. So we lost about a generation. And so it's kind of gotten back to that same curve that it had been before HIV/AIDS.
Well, with that large increase in population, I would think just food, feeding the population is a major challenge way beyond the health needs of the population.
It's a massive concern. It was interesting. I was never raised on a farm, and so I never thought of rain and how it affected whether people lived or died. While we were there, we had two of the years we were there, we had significant famine because of either too much rain or not enough rain. And And so food is a huge issue. It's one of the biggest problems with the government that was there while we were there, and actually they just changed that government because they sort of lost reputation in the rest of the world, and so people weren't sending. They weren't allowing people to send food. But it's one of the many countries in Africa that gets a huge amount of food relief. Most of that being maize or corn. Yes.
What did you actually do there? What was your role?
Well, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. That's probably all I know how to do. No, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I was the medical director of the Bite Cure Hospital. And I was there as a missionary from SIM, which is a large mission organization, and then I was seconded to cure through that work.
And you were there for 5 years, is that right?
We were there for almost 6 years.
Okay.
And we'd probably still be there if there weren't some other circumstances.
So did this project send you there?
No, we were there. Let's see, when did we start working on this project, Doris? Was that, it was?
We started back in 2014.
Yeah, it was 2014, and it was 2015 when it got there. So I think it was July of 2015 when it got there. But we got there in July of 2011. And it's a wonderful place. If you go in wet season though, because dry season is when they do all the fires and it's dusty and it's dry and it's brown and it's really ugly in dry season. And in wet season, it is a paradise. And the people are wonderful. I wish I'd known, when there was a song, I wish I'd known there was going to be music. I could have brought some Malawian song. Okay, thank you.
Dort.
I just want to say,
Tim, can you?
I just want to say thanks to our club for all the wonderful work they've done, and hope they'll feel very proud of the fact that we have made not only a contribution, but a broad outreach to the families and children in Africa. Congratulations to all of our club members.
Thank you, Doris. It's a great honor to have you here, Dr. Burgess. Thank you for the update. And kudos to Doris and Kathleen, who had led this part of the global project for our club. Let me see here. Thank you to Rachel for visiting. Last time we will be introducing you as a guest. And final announcements, pick up your tickets, please, on the way out. They look like this. And it looks like Marianne and Francie, where we'll be taking care of that. Next week, please tune in for new member talk by Meg Hubeck. Please stand for the four-way test. If you can unmute yourself. And the things we think, say, or do, first.
Is it the
Second,
truth?
to fair to all concerned. Third, with
build
no
goodwill
and better friendship. And fourth, beneficial to all. Be well this holiday weekend. Meeting adjourned.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
See y'all later.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Liz.
Bye. Thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Bye.